GS, welcome, my friend. It's awesome to have you here. I got to tell you, I was so inspired by the first chapter I read in your book. We were talking before this. I'm very excited to read the rest. I got to purchase the audiobook and get going. But very important messages you're sharing with men, man, and all the work you're doing. And so just privileged to have you here.
Yeah, Jake, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this discussion, and I'm glad you have been liking the book, and I'll look forward to hearing more of your comments as you get through it.
100%. 100%. Well, first off, for people who don't know you, Jess, just tell people what your message is, what your focus is, what you help men do, and the importance of that.
Yeah, I'm helping men fix their relationship by stepping into more of what I call their masculine core, or embodying this thing that I've written about in my book called the masculine blueprint. And based on my own personal experience, I've got a long story that it sits behind all the work that I do now. But men are experiencing a lot of the same problems, and they don't realize that a lot of them are tied back to a lack of their own leadership in the relationship. And so what I teach men is this, I call it relational masculinity, and it's about how to be grounded within yourself and more relational with your intimate partner. And that's a unique combination. A lot of men's work doesn't always focus on the relational aspects enough, so I wanted to put more emphasis and give men more tools in that area as well. Because I don't care how masculine you think you are, you get into a relationship, and if you're not relational with your woman, it's not going to go well.
Well, and what you said is one of the things that occurs to me and that I found very telling and very inspiring. What I was reading from your material on your site, your book, is this concept that I think when we say masculinity, there is these days, unfortunately, a very negative connotation with it. It's like controlling, overbearing, angry, aggressive. It's like, don't do all that stuff. And I love that you specify the difference in the masculinity you're talking about, which is a mature masculinity versus what might be seen typically with it. Can you talk a bit about that and what the difference is to you?
Yeah, you're right. We unfortunately, we kind of lump everything into one bucket, and that bucket that you're talking about is toxic masculinity. And, it's kind of like immigration. There's legal immigration, which is good. It's great for our country. There's illegal immigration, which we want to make sure that doesn't happen. But you got to be specific about what part of that bigger topic that you're talking about. And when you lump them together, then something big gets lost. And yeah, a lot of people hear masculinity and they translate that into toxic masculinity. And it's not true. What I set out to write about and create was a model of masculinity that works in the modern world, in the post-Me Too world, without being watered down. And so that's where the masculine blueprint came from. And it's my offering to the world of this is what I think masculine means. And any man that embodies the three primary elements of this blueprint that I talk about, anybody that embodies those will be living more from their masculine. And I'll pause there so you can comment, Jake, but we should probably go into what is the masculine blueprint, because it answers the question of what is masculinity?
Oh yeah. We're gonna talk all about it. And one thing I want to ask before we dive into that blueprint, which is very insightful. I think just the three concepts are insightful in and of themselves, but I wondered if you could touch on generally, kind of in your view, and I know you're not an expert on porn addiction specifically, but I think you understand, relationship issues very well and some of the things that can feed into addiction, et cetera. So kind of taking this lens of healthy masculinity, this concept of getting in touch with our masculine core, what are men facing today, maybe in particular, that's feeding into these, a lot of these emotional roots that contribute to addiction?
Yeah, a lot of men these days, we feel anxious about many things: money and love and the state of the world and loneliness and all of these things. We've become much more of a fragmented, lonely society. And so men are looking for a salve to feel better within themselves and about themselves. And, when you feel lonely, when you feel alienated, when you don't feel fulfilled in your purpose, it creates an anxiety in you. And, the porn is just one of many choices for men to try to salve that anxiety. And a lot of I mean, this is the first part of the blueprint, which is about getting more grounded. A lot of the work that I do with men is using embodiment exercises, which helps them really start to settle and ground their nervous system. And so that gnawing feeling that you want to make stop through an addiction, you can actually learn to be with that feeling and settle it within yourself without the need for these external, whether it be dopamine hits or sexual, feeding your sexuality or anything like that. So that's a big part of the foundation of all the work that I do, is getting you more grounded. And then that leads into being able to make better choices around your masculinity, but also better choices around your addictions.
Let's dig right into that, because I think probably the concept you're talking about, and you're the expert on this, but I assume it's the respond versus react kind of
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah.
And this concept of embodiment has been incredibly powerful for me. It's actually something I'm only digging into in the last year. You and I had a previous conversation where I talked about how I've been doing Wim Hof breathing every day for about a little over a year now, and really trying to bring presence into my life, that self-awareness, that kind of I'm being a witness internally, emotions and thoughts. This is something again that I think there is so much profundity to, and so much potential in my life. And if you can talk about what's the power of that, maybe what have you seen personally for you, or that men are able to develop? And for those who don't know what embodiment is, probably touching on exactly this.
Let me answer your question by just introducing the first element of this masculine blueprint, which is in my book. The first element, as you've already said, is respond versus react. And so for the listeners, this is the quality of a man that's got a certain stillness to him. And there's the spaciousness inside of him, whereas, using your word, Jake, where he can witness who he is, how he's being moment to moment to moment. And then within that space of being able to witness how you're being, how the world is operating, you can make choice about what you want to do next. And I think it's that choicefulness that is one of the most powerful outcomes of grounding your nervous system. You're not driven by anxiety or habituation or your wounding anymore. You're driven and acting out of your intention, who you want to be moment to moment. So that's one of the most powerful things about it. The problem is, most of us have a lot of childhood wounding. We have our fears, we have our insecurities, and as I said before, that creates an anxiety within you. And then we operate out of that anxiety. Everything we do when we're anxious is generally to relieve the discomfort of that anxiety. And so that's why, like, for instance, men get defensive, because it's too intense, whatever she's complaining about. And so we come back with information to try to talk her out of being mad. But that's just our desperate strategy to get her to stop being upset with us, so that our anxiety goes down within us. Well, what if you could tame that? What would be possible in your life? And we do that through embodiment practice. I mean, we do it lots of ways, but the primary one is through embodiment practice. And here's what that is. These are practices that are designed to take some of your awareness and turn it away from your thinking, strategizing mind that's trying to get you out of trouble. Turn it away from the thinking mind and into some physicality, some physical sensation in the body. And I'm usually telling guys the specific sensation to focus on. Because when you bring some of your awareness into your physicality, you actually come out of the thinking mind and more into this moment of what's actually happening. Because when you're focused on your thinking mind, you're just living in a thought world, and all thoughts are about either the future or the past. They're never about now. The only thing that's now is experience. And so when you put your awareness on physical sensation, well, guess what? That only happens right in the now. And so it just kind of pulls you into the here and now, into the present moment, more reliably, I guess you could say. And when you do that, you start to be able to see what's actually happening instead of the kind of the amplified fears that a lot of us will live with. And so when you do that, you become more present, you become more still, you have a little bit more spaciousness inside of you. And then, as I said before, then you can live out of choice and intention rather than wounding or habituation or self-protection. So that's why I have guys do these practices, these embodiment practices, and it's a daily thing. You do it on a daily basis. And as you're experiencing, Jake, it starts to build, just like training for a marathon. It starts to build on itself, and suddenly you notice new capabilities within you, and that's a really good feeling.
And one of the things I work with men on is emotional awareness, in particular, emotional mindfulness, and this essentially knowing the what and the why behind what I'm feeling. And so that's more like a psychological focus,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
You're bringing a focus to the body and really connecting thought and feeling into the body, and bringing that presence, which is just, I think it's beautiful. It's powerful. I want to practice it more. In your view, one of the things I've debated on sometimes as I work with men on emotional mindfulness which is just, it's, it's crucial. It's central to addiction recovery. Because if I can't do that well, if I can't manage my emotions and understand them and feel
Mhm.
compassion for myself, then I'm going to escape all the time. Right.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I debate on is I think that so much of the importance is surrounding the awareness. If I can come deeply in touch with what I am feeling and be present with it, that's really the main thing rather than so much, here's what I'm going to do to change the situation or here's how I'm going to fix things. In your view, what is that balance between the awareness piece and how important that is versus here's how I'm going to shift or plan or do something different when it
Yeah.
comes to something like your wife's angry at you or your partner's, pissed
Yeah.
off and you're charged, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We men, we try to intellectualize everything. So feeling comes in, our coping mechanisms immediately squash it down, and then we try to intellectualize it. And then that's why we have these fights with our women so much, is because we try to intellectualize the feeling, and then she's like, what? Like, no, it doesn't land for her. It actually feels very painful for her, is when we intellectualize things. So what I say is, I say, men, learn to feel these things deeply, and then practice the skill of being able to put some words to it. But you do that in a very masculine fashion. You're very succinct. You're to the point. You say, when this happens, this is what I'm feeling. You're able to name these things, and then after you've felt it and named it, then your coping mechanisms can kick in. That's fine. It's like when you say when you say X, I feel really sad and hurt, but I can bear that. I can bear that because you allowed yourself to feel it. And in doing that, it's going to then move through you. Problem is, what we normally do is something maybe hurts us and we're like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. And then we just internalize it. And then, and then it actually runs us from the inside because maybe we have a little resentment towards our wife and then we hold on to it for 10 years because of one thing that she said that we denied actually hurt us. So you got to not let the coping mechanisms come in before. You just allow yourself to deeply, viscerally feel, to name it. Maybe you have a request or a boundary around it. Like, you made that joke about my career at the dinner party. I was really hurt. And I want to be in a relationship where we don't badmouth each other in front of other people. We got each other's back. I'm serious about this, baby. That doesn't work for me to feel like that's okay between us. So can you and I agree that we're not going to do that to each other? We're going to we're going to have each other's back and not shit talk each other. So you might be setting boundaries or making requests, but after that, you're not dripping that on everybody else. Like, I need you to change so that I feel better. I'm going to name it. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to name it. I might make a request or a boundary, but I don't need the rest of the world to change for me to feel okay. And so anyway, that's I think the biggest difference that I'm trying to teach men, how to really feel their emotions, but contain their emotions as well.
It's such a powerful concept. I think that our go-tos often, and what I work with clients on, is mostly anger or escapism, right?
Mm.
That's like, for men, it's like either I'm pissed off or I'm shut down, right?
Yeah,
Either I'm going to get
true.
ticked or I'm going to just go quiet and go off and escape to my own whatever behaviors, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
deal with it. And yeah, I think that's very powerful. I wondered so we talked about respond versus react. So there's two other points in the masculine blueprint. One of them is to provide structure. And I'm actually curious to know more about this. Talk more about what that means.
Yeah, provide structure is about leadership in the relationship. And it doesn't mean you're the only leader. It's not a zero-sum game where you're a leader or a follower, but you bring more leadership than you are now. And what we're talking about is a man that first and foremost has a lot of inner clarity about what he thinks needs to happen. And you can't lead anybody else in any endeavor unless you actually have inner clarity. And what does your deeper wisdom tell you that not only that you need and want and what your boundaries and preferences are, but also just what the moment calls for based on the greater good. A man that is providing this kind of leadership has that inner clarity. And then from that inner clarity, he's able to provide it externally in the form of directionality or decision-making or structure, not necessarily the what you're going to do, but how you're going to do it. And you become an ordering force for your life and the lives of those around you. And it's not about being in control. That's very different. This is about leadership that you offer as a gift to the people that are close to you and people that rely on you. Unfortunately, because of the prevalence of nice guy syndrome, there's not a lot of leadership in many relationships, at least not from him. Plenty of it from her, because she's going to step in and fill that vacuum if you don't. So guys who are quote unquote nice guys, they're not having a lot of their inner clarity. Their awareness is turned outwards, looking at everybody else as to what the safe thing to do is. But what I want them to do is turn that radar partially inward and see what you need, what you think is the right thing. What does your deeper wisdom call for? That's leadership. That's what relational leadership is about. And I want to add one thing. A big part of this leadership is attunement to your partner. So it's not about you just roll in and like, okay, here's what we're doing. You actually know your partner really well. You know her needs and preferences and boundaries, so that the leadership you offer doesn't just stomp all over those, such that you barely have gotten your idea out of your head and she's like, that's totally not going to work for me. How could you not know that? And you avoid that by knowing your partner really well and attuning to her and folding that into your leadership from the beginning. So those are a number of thoughts around leadership in the relationship.
You've said three different things that interest me a lot. One is how we actually find this inner clarity. Another is this nice guy stuff, and the third one I've forgotten in this moment. But let's talk about nice guy syndrome, because when I actually read this on your site and in your book, I know that this can easily be mistaken for, okay, I'm not supposed to be nicer. It's like I'm going to puff up and be this cool guy, or I got to be, really confident. What is the difference between? Well, yeah, let's talk about the difference between being kind, or however you might phrase it, versus being a nice guy, and why that's damaging.
Yeah, when you're a nice guy, you're secretly but frantically trying to assess what the other person wants for them to be happy, and then you're going to give it to them. And you might pretend that it was your idea to begin with, or you might not. But or you just collapse and be like, whatever you want. Either way, there's a franticness because you feel unsafe inside. Being kind is different. Being kind is about being attuned to others and folding in what's important for them as well, because they're an equal part of this equation. It's not just all about you. That's what somebody who's kind does. Somebody who's kind is wise enough to understand their impact on others, and generally strives, as a good human being, strives not to be an asshole, or strives to not knowingly do things that really are going to impact your loved ones in a negative way, unless you have to. Sometimes that's inevitable, and then you got to be able to stick to your guns. But outside of that, you're not just carelessly harming others and their interests because you don't give a hoot. That's what kindness is about. So there's a huge difference. One's driven by attunement. The other is driven by anxiety and fear and desperation.
And so the other thing that I was thinking about is this inner clarity, right? I know that out of the men who listen to my podcast, because I've been in their shoes in the past, I remember how challenging it was for me to have a sense of inner clarity, because I felt like such a victim to my inner whims, right? Of what I wanted in the moment,
Mhm.
and my addictions and things that seem to really rule my internal life. How can men find this inner clarity? That's a big question that I've just asked, but maybe what are your reflections on what you've seen as far as how men find that and actually
Yeah.
gain access to that inner wisdom?
Well, a lot of it is about eradicating your anxiety. It's in some ways it's almost that easy. When you are not anxious, you are much more clear-headed and you know what you want. Your inner wisdom, if you haven't beaten it down into a pulp over your entire lifetime, if there's any of it left, your inner wisdom in the spaciousness of no anxiety, it starts to grow back like little shoots of green plants. They're small at first, but if you treat them right, they grow. And so your inner wisdom is there. You have to get rid of the anxiety. That's the beautiful thing. It's not about you got to go get it. It's about taking away what shouldn't be there, and that's the anxiety. That's a big one. And I think the the other piece of that is it's kind of like a mantra that I have men do occasionally. It's like you've got to come to believe that your needs matter. Your opinion matters, your viewpoint matters. And so many of us we've beaten ourselves down or allowed ourselves to be beaten down into like believing that we don't have anything to add and that what we want doesn't matter, and then we don't speak our needs. What you want matters. And the more you believe that, the more clarity you'll start to see yourself have.
And it's so interesting because I reflect back on my own life and this shift or this transformation that I've both gone through and I'm still going through of understanding exactly what you're saying, which is I think I had this perception in the past that if I pursue what I want or desire, that's selfish, right? That's
Mm,
me being self-centered.
mhm,
Where I think you're talking about a balance of, again, that attunement with what others' needs are and what's important to them in connection and collaboration with what I want and that my needs matter. And it's interesting in my own life, I've suffered a great deal of grief and feelings of fear and shame that
mhm,
were that were covered over by this self-criticism of, well, don't be weak. Stop thinking that you're going through all these hard things. Right? That inner critic that I had inside telling me get over yourself. Like show up more selflessly. Stop letting all this stuff bother you. And I think a lot of us have this voice inside
mhm,
that invalidate our emotions and our feelings. I find that fascinating that, you're saying this is a key to actually being good and caring in a relationship is to see that my needs matter.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important for men to understand that. We get accused of being selfish, and sometimes we are, but it's like we can be selfish and sort of, ignore our own needs. It's a weird combination, and unfortunately, our women see this probably more than they see this. But yeah, sometimes we have to learn to be more selfish in ways that we're not yet, and that is around our emotional needs.
Hmm. So let's talk about this last part of the masculine blueprint, create safety.
Yeah. Yeah, in general, I'm talking about physical, financial, and emotional safety. In this book, I talk mostly about emotional safety. I'll probably talk about the other ones in a sequel. But so we're talking about emotional safety, and I don't know of any bigger determinant to a woman's openness with her man than how safe and trusting she feels and connected she feels to him. So I'm always telling men, don't smirk at this thing called emotional connection because it's the thing that will get you everything that you want. Everything that you want in a relationship is right on the other side of a strong emotional connection with your woman. And like me, 17 years ago now at this point, um, a lot of men don't know what that means. I don't even know what emotional connection looks like. They sure as heck don't know how to build it. And that's one of the things I do in my boot camp, my relationship repair boot camp program with guys is part of it is learning to master these dynamics of how to build emotional connection with a woman. So there's some very definitive things that you can do to build connection with her that they're not easy, but they're also not super complicated. So I work on that with guys. And a lot of it has to do with showing yourself at a deeper level and also receiving her at a deeper level instead of on this kind of this informational level. There's more depth to what you're sharing with her. So that's what I say to guys: is men, put the time in to learn how to build emotional connection and actually go do it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I reflect on as you say that, GS, is again going back to that kind of these protective strategies we can have inside. Because I think about this in an IFS or a parts work standpoint
Mhm.
all the time. Of we have these protector parts that, as men, so often our go-to is that anger, right? And I've found that for me in my own life, and then teaching others to do this, of the anger is secondary. Like, if you're trying to emotionally connect with somebody and be vulnerable, if you're at the status of anger, that doesn't get you very deep into actually what's important to you and what you're really feeling underneath the surface.
Mhm. Mhm.
The anger is the control factor that I got to fix this, I got to change this, this isn't right, and so I need to make it different. And really what's underneath, I loved what you said about kind of these genuine feelings, right? The fear, or here's what hurt for me. I
Mhm.
think that we can be so, as men, we can easily be prone to, well, it doesn't hurt me. Nothing hurts me, right?
I'm
That's
fine.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
The toxic masculinity, right? As you were saying.
Yeah.
Um, In fact, I think we could even associate that with things like stoicism. I know I used to do that, like, got to be stoic, right? But in fact, stoicism, I went and read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and I was like, he doesn't say anything like that at all. It's not about not showing emotion. It's actually about caring very deeply, and so much so about the good of the world and others, to the point where you are willing to show up with strength, right? At
Mhm.
least that's all the messages I took. Yeah, any thoughts that you have about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a big lesson I learned over my growth arc. Stoicism's great for the first part of interacting, where you don't overreact, but then you got to step out of your stone fortress and actually engage with your woman. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions around stoicism, and you got to stay engaged. That's what your woman wants. She wants your engagement, and that's why so many of our women are pissed off at us, because we do get stony or withdrawn, and we think that's what the moment calls for. And so, yeah, they want our engagement. They want us to feel them more deeply. I think that's something that guys get wrong a lot. They obviously they don't want us to fix. I think guys know that women don't want us to fix them, but we keep doing it. And we don't know what the alternative is. But the alternative is they want to feel you feeling her. They want to feel you feeling her.
Mm.
And now there's more to it than that. There is an action phase, but let that come later. I always talk about feelings first, facts later. Like, join her in the feelings first, then get to the facts later, and you'll be way more successful.
Love that. Feelings first, facts later. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, and so one of the things that my mind is on is how much conflict in a relationship can really play into relapse and addiction for men. A lot of the men that I work with, and this was this way for myself as well. I wondered if you could talk about this concept of the masculine to feminine polarity that can go on, and kind of a couple of dysfunctional dynamics, which we've already talked about a couple, but the common dysfunctional dynamics that men find themselves in, and maybe how to come out of that dysfunction between the feminine to masculine.
Yeah, let me answer the question of, like, what do we mean by this masculine feminine polarity? And
Good call. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I mean, and let's not get worked up about gender or anything like that. Let's just think of these as energies. We all have a mix of masculine and feminine. So anybody that's wanting to get worked up, no need. Um,
Good. I'm glad you clarified.
yeah, relationships work better when there's a directive energy and a receptive energy. And those are two other terms that we can use. Um, And this concept of masculine feminine is not new. You've got the whole Shiva Shakti that goes back hundreds or thousands of years. I actually don't know which, but because when you have two people that are trying to lead in actually, let me say this. We're talking about the domain of intimacy, of love, of romance, of sexuality, of partnership. We're not talking about doing the laundry. So doing the laundry, it doesn't matter. I mean, everybody's in their masculine. We're just getting shit done. We go to work, we're getting shit done. Cleaning the kitchen, we're getting shit done. But in the intimacy, the romance, the love, the sexuality, that's what we're talking about here. And it works better when you have a lead and a follow. And there's a little, it could be a power dynamic or just maybe I'll more innocuously call it lead follow. That's what creates the juice when one asserts and one submit. And again, let's not overemphasize these terms about, assert and submit. It's play. It's consensual play. Nothing of this is compulsive. It's all consensual. And so take that out of the bedroom. If you as a man aren't bringing any masculine leadership to the relationship, she's going to start to get cranky, critical, less interested in sexuality. As a general rule, we're stereotyping, but that covers our 2 sigma and 80% on the bell curve. And so you're a guy that has no opinion. You're like a nice guy, and you really have no opinion. Whatever you want, honey. Happy wife, happy life. Whatever you want, honey. At first, for her, that she's like, oh, this guy's easy to be with. And then about a year in, she's like, oh my God, who are you? Like, is there something in there? Do you have opinions about anything? And so men that don't lead, men who want to be considered masculine but don't lead, starts to create a lot of that irritability. So I'm saying this to your audience, men, if you're not bringing leadership in certain areas into your life, if you're making her make all the decisions on everything because you think you're just an easygoing guy, you are burdening her, and you're going to observe more irritability, more criticism, and less interest in sexuality. Just guarantee it. Full stop.
Mm-hmm.
Same goes for emotional safety. If you're not creating emotional safety for her and emotional connection with her, irritability, criticism, lack of interest in sexuality and closeness. So all those problems that you thought were about kind of like the fight of the day, actually, in many cases, can be a result of a more underlying lack of your masculine leadership as defined by the blueprint. So I know it worked for me. A lot of the issues that I had in my marriage, my first marriage, don't crop up now. Yeah, because I have a different partner, but it's also because I'm very different and I'm bringing much more to the table than I used to be. So a lot of your relationship problems you don't know, but are actually related to lack of masculine leadership. And when you start to address that, suddenly those problems start to magically go away.
Yeah. I think this, again, this getting in touch with your masculine core and being very, very conscious of that, very directive with it in a compassionate, kind, strong, resilient way. I think there's just so many things that, again, we as men can deal with in our relationships that are fueling things like pornography addiction, just because of the tension that we feel, the dissonance that we feel between here's the life that I want, the relationship that I want, and I don't have it. And there's a real grief that comes along with that for a lot of guys.
Totally. And imagine it, you're dealing with your woman, but you're not bringing leadership and haven't for years. So she's just kind of chronically cranky at you. So then that night you have a choice. I can go deal with my chronically cranky woman, or I can go into this fantasy land where the woman is always happy with you and spreads her legs. Like,
right.
Of course these guys are going to do that because they're too scared to actually create a better relationship over here. And so to the men out there, men, stop escaping. Stop escaping. I get it, but stop escaping. And you can create a better dynamic with your real life woman. And then she's going to be the wild, sexual, loving partner that you're dreaming about, not this fantasy land on a screen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's powerful. It's powerful. And a lot of different layers for men to work through. And this is one of them. These relational layers are very important. One of the things that I was curious about, GS, and I looked into this a bit online today. I was on your social media account a while back. I think it's on your site, Instagram, I think, TikTok maybe. Dark masculinity. I looked that up and I was like, what does that mean? When I first saw it, I was like, GS, what are you talking about here, man? That's some weird stuff. And then I looked into it a bit, and actually, again, I often take things when it comes to a psychological perspective back to IFS or parts work. It made me think of, you said, the shadow side, and then I was like, okay, I see the wisdom in this. Do you want to talk about just uh, this can easily be misconstrued? I think it's very important, though. Um, what is this concept of dark masculinity? Why can it kind of help a man get into a better emotional state? So that's going to help with addiction recovery or a better positive relationship with his wife or partner.
Yeah, let's just call it what it is. We're talking about dark sexual energy,
Okay.
and
Well, I
and
talk with men all day who have that. We all have it inside, of course.
yeah, well, there's let's just call that out. There's a difference between the darkness that you hide and pretend to your wife that you're just like a normal dude, and then there's the darkness that you guys choose to play with together and you bring it to the table. That's very different. And we don't want guys hiding in the shadows, hiding their darkness around sexuality. We want them coming forth to their woman and finding a modality that works for the two of them and supports the play and adventure in the realm of sexuality. And so I want to draw a contrast, not a contrast, but I want to highlight both the dark and the light. So the dark in sexuality there's an implied power differential. Now it's a consensual power differential. I'm not talking about anything here that doesn't have consent. If there's no consent, then I'm not talking. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a partnership of consensual adults who are generally a long-standing couple, is what I like to say, who have agreed to play a little bit with power dynamics. So there's a strong leadership that's not nicey nice, and it's edgy. And by itself, this can lead to bad things by itself. So we always want the dark, in our responsible model here, we want the dark to be governed by the light. The light is attunement, it's care, it's love, it's protection. Those are all the light. Okay. So you got to have the dark and the light. And my contention is that most women are dying from their partner. I mean, absent other factors, but most women are dying for this combination of dark and light. Not all the time, but sometimes. Because if you get all dark, it gets old because she doesn't feel safe, protected, or heart connected. If you do all light, it gets old because you feel like a nice guy and she doesn't get as turned on because you just seem like kind of a nice guy in sexuality. So it's that combination of dark and light. And so dark is a very strong lead. It's mischievous. It's a little edgy. It can feel a little dangerous. And again, as long as she knows that he's governed by the light and his way of being is also governed by the light. So even while he's a little edgy with her, he's attuned to her, he's protecting her, he's caring for her, he's heart connected to her. And when you bring those together, that creates that fun but edgy and interesting sexual consensual play that I think both men and women want at times. So that's just some of my initial comments. I'll pause there to see how that lands for you.
It's so funny because I've got my Christian parts of me just like acting up so furiously right now that are like, GS, this is some dangerous, weird stuff, man. I can't get down with it. But I think that I'm also able to see the wisdom in it too. And I think some of the balance that you're talking about and some things that stretch some of my perceptions with that very, very conservative kind of background, right?
Mm-hmm.
So still, yes. Yeah.
I would,
go ahead.
Jake, I'll just say this, and this could either be rhetorical or not. I'll leave it to you, but scrutinize which of your Christian values feel in opposition to that. Like get really clear, like what is it, what your Christian values. And what is it specifically? I'm going to leave this rhetorically for now. And I would say anybody who follows strong Christian values should get clear on that for themselves. Instead of the assumption like, well, it doesn't feel right, but I'm not sure. And so, I'm paralyzed now. Like actually sit down. Like it'd be an interesting thought experiment to see where there's fit and where there's contravention.
It's fascinating. Well, so one of the questions that's come up for me a few different times in our conversation, GS, and that I'm really curious about is your background. You had a previous marriage, you got divorced, that was years ago. Now you're in a new partnership, right, with a wonderful woman. I assume a wonderful woman. And tell me about that. You have a deep personal story with what led you to do the work you're doing, and it's powerful work. Tell us about that story and what you were going through years ago.
Yeah, man, I didn't. This was, I got married in 2000 actually, and she was a very, is a very strong woman, um, amazing in so many ways, and I didn't have a sense of who I was. I didn't have any connection to my emotions. I didn't have any connection to my insecurities. And so
Mhm.
I didn't know how to deal with emotions and insecurities, and I sure as heck didn't know how to deal with her. And when she got fired up. And then the longer that went on with me not dealing with my emotions and insecurities, then it just makes her more fired up and harder to deal with. And so, by the end of that 10-year marriage, I had allowed myself to become very emasculated, and was really just trying to avoid trouble rather than actually connecting and with my woman or being my own self. Um, Needless to say, that leads to divorce. I would say, guys, if this situation sounds familiar and you don't do anything about it, that's where you're headed, because a woman is not going to stick around forever if you're not bringing any kind of leadership, if you're not creating emotional safety for her, and if you're not grounded. Like, the feminine nervous system at some point will absolutely tire of that and not want to be in a relationship. So you got to deal with these things now. And unfortunately I didn't. So the 17 years since then have been my journey to find a better way to codify it, to share it with men so they have the resources that I didn't have, because I didn't have any resources back then. I had nobody. My father couldn't show me these things. My friends hadn't been through it. And it wasn't until I got David Deda's book that I was like, oh, wow, masculine, feminine polarity. I had no idea what this was. So David's book really kicked that off for me. And then I studied with David for a while, and then some of David's disciples. And I've been on my own learning path for the last 17 years. And I hope I am for the rest of my life. And then in parallel to that, as you mentioned, I've been in relationship for the last 11 years with a very strong woman. She's got a strong feminine and a strong masculine.
Mhm.
Uh, she got,
Mhm. Mhm.
masculine from her dad and the feminine from her mom. So she my longtime relationship with her has been the practice space to learn what opens her up, my partner up, what creates more closeness, what creates all the things that I'm looking for, closeness and fun and adventure and sexuality together. What brings more of that and what brings less of it. And so it's, I've been in the laboratory this whole time in parallel to being on a learning path. So I can tell you that everything I write about and talk about, I've probably been through it myself. I mean, more than likely, I've been through that exact situation myself and had to figure out what served the greater good for the two of us, what served the greater love between the two of us. So that's been my journey, and I wake up every day super excited to help guys um, find a better way in their relationship, find themselves. Really, is really what it's about. So it's heartwarming work, very rewarding.
Well, what you're talking about sounds a lot like my wife, the strong masculine and feminine ends. And yeah, it's very personally reminiscent for me. I think when you talk about this disconnection from your own insecurities that you used to go through, your own
Mhm.
fears
Yeah.
and your feelings, and I remember years ago, and I'm religious and spiritual person. I
Mhm.
said a prayer. I was praying to God, and I was saying, I want to be a better man. Uh, what's kind of the next step for me? And I was contemplating that, meditating on it. And I had this answer come to me, which was, you got to let go of your anger. Or I heard in my mind, you got to give me your anger. And at the time, I was like, what anger?
I'm not angry.
It's like, what are you talking about? Why am I getting that as an inclination here? And over the next few weeks, I really started to become deeply aware of the fact that I was angry all of the time. It's like,
Yeah.
I told someone this a while back. They said, like Bruce Banner, like, he says, my secret is I'm always angry, right? That was really my life. Like, I think from the time I was a kid all the way up into my 20s, and I was just always angry under the surface. And what I found when I started to explore that was, again, it wasn't the anger that was the primary problem. It was the fear that I was constantly feeling.
Hmm.
I'm not enough. I need to be better. I've got these loaded expectations of myself and everything I've got to be and all the people I've got to save and the things I got to fix.
Hmm.
And it was just this constant weight, constant. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I've been there, and the thing that I had to do is get back in touch with my basic goodness. It's like I know I'm a good person, but then you have that voice that's like, "No, you're not. Here's
yeah.
why."
Yeah.
And I went through. I went through and that process of just like getting back in touch with believing that I'm basically good.
hmm It reminds me of, did you see Inside Out 2? Came out last year.
No, I didn't. My kids are
No.
too old to see movies like that.
Mm. Okay, it's one that you should watch. I know that it's a cartoon. You probably watch cartoons. I don't know. Your kids are older now, much older now. But I, it was actually, when it came out, it hit the top number one animated film of all time as far as box office sales. It's amazing, and it really lays out the mind very, very well. In fact, the people who created it, they were psychologists that know parts work in IFS
Yeah, it's totally
in
parts
depth.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And so I was amazed by, they talk about this core of Riley, right? Who's the main character. And at her core is this belief, I'm a good person.
Hmm.
And in the movie, this is a spoiler alert for the, but look, it's been like a year. In the movie, essentially that gets changed to I'm not good enough. And that is the underlying belief that fuels all of her fear and anxiety and all the crazy things that she's doing to try to manage her problems. It's interesting to me that you say that's at the core in so many ways is you've you came in touch with your goodness again, to
Hmm.
believe that ultimately you're a good person with all flaws and mistakes and all that stuff, but I'm
Yeah.
fundamentally a good person. Very powerful.
Yeah, and I think anybody that's interested in going deeper, read The Shame That Binds You, the book, The Shame That Binds You. And he talks a lot about the difference between regular shame and toxic shame. And, it's like, I'm a good person. Yeah, I did some stupid stuff, but I am a good person. And I prove that a lot versus, I'm sure you know this, is like, oh my God, I'm so flawed. I did this stupid thing. And it's just more evidence that I'm a doofus. Um,
Yep.
that's the big difference. Is it the behavior or is it the person?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I was, so something I've been going through lately is, I'll wake up later than I mean to. It's just some stupid bad habit I've got into lately, and I'm trying to change it because I was so good at getting up the same time every day. And
Hmm.
so this is something I'm trying to manage right now through different various strategies. But I was feeling this shame about that. Got this, inner critic, right? It's just like, man, gosh, why can't you just get up on time, keep your word to yourself? And now you've messed up. And look how many things you screwed up and all the opportunities you won't get now. And you got to be less lazy. All right. I just got that inner critic just going. And I'm just trying to step back and observe and be mindful of,
Yeah.
okay, this inner critic is talking to me and he's trying to motivate me. He's trying to, make me better. But ultimately, that when we listen to that critic and we identify with it, it just makes things so much worse, right? It fuels the
Yeah.
problem.
Here's the
But
problem.
I actually came in touch with again, this goes back to this mindfulness and this presence. For you, it's you talk about the somatic end of it, which I need to practice more. But I came in touch with, instead of getting so caught up in the judgment, I got down to the shame. and this belief of like, I'm not good enough. And I just stayed present with it rather than trying to hide from it or avoid it or skirt around it, is just
Yeah.
stayed present. Here's what I'm experiencing and feeling. And it was so interesting. That really was then became a great motivator for me, where I've improved in that area over the last week. And it was actually very positive for me.
Mm.
But it took me actually taking time to feel what I was feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. That's the only way it moves through us, is if we allow ourselves to feel it. It's some of the work that I do with the men in the relationship repair boot camp is that exactly learning just to feel these things, and then they can just pass through us rather than getting stuck. So love that you're
Yeah.
experiencing.
Well, awesome, GS. Well, anything we haven't covered today that you feel is particularly important for men either in recovery or who are trying to make their relationships better?
Yeah. I mean, I would go bigger picture, I think, and just tell men that there's a number out there, and that number is the number of minutes you have left on this earth.
Hmm.
And how you want to spend those? You want to spend them stuck in a really dysfunctional relationship, or do you want to step up and do the work to become bigger than the dysfunction, to become bigger than her moods, to become bigger than your own insecurities and that voice that you and I just talked about, Jake? You can make that choice or you can not. It's really up to you, but your time is limited, and so do something different. I think that's the message I want to give guys possible, that something different is possible. I didn't think it was when I was going through that, but now I do know that, and I try to teach it as best I can to men. Things can be different if you're willing to put in the time. That's what I would leave
Hmm.
the guys.
Love that. I really appreciate your time, GS. Such an awesome conversation. And where do people find you if they want to get help, be part of the boot camp, et cetera? What do you offer?
Yeah, if you want to just get a hit of me in various videos and information, just go to my Instagram, GS Youngblood, MIR, or YouTube. Both of them have lots of content of me talking about various topics. And if you want to find out about the work itself and doing it with me, then go to my website, gsyoungblood.com. And the thing that I'm excited most about is the boot camp. It's a 3-month program that you do with a cohort of 12 men. And it's been my most rewarding program yet. The guys really get a lot out of it. And we just sold out our 7th one. So we're doing something right. Or you can do one-on-one coaching, or we do every year in February, we do a workshop in Mexico. Check it out all on the website and see if there's something that appeals.
Love it. Well, you're doing awesome work, GS, helping a lot of guys, and appreciate you coming on. It's a privilege.
Thanks, Jake. Love the work that you're doing with men as well to free them from these addictions.